What would you do in this scenario, actually? Because I think I would have left the state. In 1994, in Oakville, Washington, something extremely strange happened. It rained what was essentially jelly. Side note, if you want a full video on this, I'm gonna have one up on my channel. This story is insane. So during this series of rainstorms, instead of water, what came down was this odd, clear jelly substance, and people became extremely ill and people's pets were dying. So they had to test it and figure out what this was and where it was coming from. The strangest part, scientists could not determine what it was, but what they found was that it had human white blood cells and bacteria in it that was found in the human digestive tract. And we still have no idea what caused this or where it came from. This has got to be one of the worst ways you could possibly go. His name was Hugo, and he was a 41-year-old factory worker at a meat distribution facility out in Oregon. So while he's cleaning one of the larger meat grinders, he kind of climbed on top but ends up losing his balance and falls inside. Other workers watched this go down, so they run over, they try to shut down the machine, but it was too late at this point. The grinder had already started to pump parts of Hugo out onto the conveyor belt. This has got to be one of the craziest courtroom moments in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. Amber's lawyer crafted this very strong narrative surrounding this particular makeup palette. Why? She alleged that Amber had carried this palette around with her for years while she was in this relationship to help hide her bruises. Without a doubt, that is a very horrific narrative until the makeup company comes forward and makes a statement. So what the makeup company is saying is that this palette didn't even exist on the market until a full year after Johnny and Amber had already divorced and separated. It's a flat-out courtroom lie. But here's the thing, Amber's lawyer is not just anybody, you know, she's a top-tier attorney, so I'm trying to understand why she would lead with such a strong narrative that A, wasn't true, but also was so easily traceable through just a manufacturing timeline. Many of us have come to know Marilyn Monroe as kind of this icon of glamour, but the conspiracies around her short-lived life are a little more mysterious than most. And if you haven't already, go check out Creep Time on YouTube with the link in the bio. So it's pretty well known that Marilyn Monroe was most likely having an affair with President John F. Kennedy, but also probably with his brother. Theorists report that around this time, Marilyn was also keeping a diary where she was writing down all this incriminating information about the Kennedys. We don't really know why though, if this was to blackmail them or just to protect herself. It's also been theorized that she may have learned of classified government information surrounding extraterrestrials, which she planned to leak. As a result, Marilyn was found under a mysterious set of circumstances at the age of 36 after an alleged barbiturate OD, and that diary was missing. So the question remains, did the Kennedys have something to do with the end of Marilyn's life, and what happened to that diary? Just a few weeks ago, people were freaking out over this picture that was captured from NASA's surveillance on Mars. And I hear you, 100%, it looks like a crashed UFO, but let's break down what this actually might be. This is more than likely a component that detached from the rover landing known as the back shell. It's a piece that was designed to both protect and then detach during NASA's landing, and most likely hit the surface of Mars going at around 80 miles per hour. And although the photos look real sci-fi, there is an explanation for this, and it was most likely very helpful for the engineers who helped construct this component to see how it actually handled the impact. Ronald McDonald first appeared in the McDonald's ads in the 1960s, and believe it or not, he was even more terrifying back then. But people loved him. Later, Ronald was redesigned into the tall red-haired clown that we know, that was long and lanky and seemingly made to resemble a French fry. So when did the public's opinion on Ronald turn to creepy? By 2003, the public felt uneasy looking at Ronald, so McDonald's redesigned the look into a modern feel that ran for ads in Japan. But these did not go over well. By 2014, they tried another makeover that was supposed to be more of a hipster vibe. But again, these didn't land very well. People did not feel comfortable with this version of Ronald. Between failed reinventions and health societies saying that McDonald's was using a clown to try to market to younger audiences, they eventually fully retired the creepy mascot of Ronald McDonald. You guys, Johnny Depp is currently testifying in the Amber Heard case, and the texts that are coming to light are insanely disturbing. He allegedly confirmed that in private messages, he said that he wanted to D and be her, and then said that he would blank her burnt corpse. And I know there's a lot going on in this trial, and there are damning things that are coming out from both parties, but these texts are just like, this is real. And I do think these texts showing up in court is hugely important, just to give us a window to see, what's beyond the public persona and how dark this relationship actually was. I want to hear what you guys think of the Tromp family, because their disappearance still baffles doctors and police. So the Tromp family, including the parents and the 3 adult children, having no history of mental illness, fled their farm in a state of paranoia, and they left behind their phones, their credit cards, didn't take their passports, and they all end up breaking away from each other while they're on the run, and they're found in very catatonic states. Like, the father is found in the woods, one of the daughters is found in the back of a stranger's car. The positive to the story is that eventually they're all found safe and they all receive medical treatment, but none of them can explain why they did that. How could a whole family simultaneously suffer a psychotic break all at once? Kaniga Jenkins was a 19-year-old woman who was caught on camera just hours before she was found in a hotel freezer. So she was at the hotel for a party, and although a later examination would say that she wasn't very intoxicated, she's caught on camera and she can barely stand. But then the cameras catch her one final time in the hotel kitchen, but then she's gone out of frame until they find her the next day in that freezer. Initially, everyone thought this might have just been a horrific accident, and I want to hear what you guys think of this, but there is a lot of mystery surrounding her friends and what they may know. Throughout the investigation, their stories kept changing, and then allegedly, this Snapchat conversation leaked, which seems to show one of the friends setting her up in exchange for $200. And this all had zero basis until a video leaked taken from that night where it shows one of the friends on camera discussing $200. This is one of the most confusing illusions. It never fails to throw me off. Okay, looking at these pictures of the 2 dogs, right? They are 100% the exact same color. The illusion has to do with chromatic confusion, where the surrounding colors are so different that they're giving the impression that these dogs are different colors when they are not. They are the same. This is the proof. They are the exact same gradient. What? The scariest places on earth, and why you do not want to find yourself anywhere near them. And don't forget to check out my YouTube with the link in the bio. The Devil's Pool is a common attraction because the size of the falls are double that of Niagara, plus the rocky formation allows you to hang near the edge. But one too many people get a little too close every year and end up getting claimed by the falls, never to be seen again. Centralia, Pennsylvania is a wasteland that has had an underground mine fire burning since the 1960s. Very few people dare to go here as the air is so toxic it can be lethal. In what's probably the creepiest, the village of Nagoro in western Japan became deserted, so the very few people who remained filled the empty spaces of the town with life-sized dolls. In the early morning of June 27th, news reporter Jody Hosentrue was set to report to the station at 3 a.m. so she could do the 6 a.m. news. So when she doesn't show up by 4 a.m., the producer's becoming concerned, so they call her and she does pick up and she apologizes and she says she's going to be there in 5 minutes. But Jody would never show. By 7 a.m., law enforcement are sent to her apartment building to check on her, to which they are horrified when they get there. There were very clear signs of a struggle, including multiple personal items of hers that were just scattered in the parking lot, including her bent car key. Jody was never found, and one of the only witnesses who came forward claims they saw a white van in the parking lot around 4:30 a.m. For years, this photo has famously gone unexplained for a very eerie reason. The photo depicts an Air Force base as they assembled for a picture on the day of Freddie Jackson's funeral. The only issue, Freddie Jackson is in the picture. Freddie was a mechanic in the Air Force, and he had passed just a few days earlier in a horrific propeller accident, so they assembled this photo to print and then pin, hoping that in his memory everyone would sign underneath. Until they got a closer look once it was up and realized that it was Freddie himself who appeared to be peering from behind one of the men. On the morning of June 30th, 1999, the remains of Ricky McCormick were found in a field out in Missouri. This was extremely odd, as the remains that were found were nearly skeletal, but Ricky had only been missing for a few days. Even stranger, found in his pockets were 2 notes that were written in his handwriting that had highly complex encrypted coded messages. This was seriously confusing for investigators because Ricky had dropped out of school when he was much younger and he couldn't exactly write, let alone encrypt coded words. The notes have been studied over the years by the top cryptographers in the US, but no one has ever been able to crack the code of what they mean or what happened to Ricky. One of the most ethically questionable human experiments, 2 psychologists had 3 triplets separated at birth and then adopted individually. The purpose of the experiment was to study them long term without them even knowing, to see how people with identical DNA growing up in completely separate scenarios would turn out. But 2 of them accidentally found each other in the 80s, prompting the 3rd one to find them when he saw them on the news. But the results of this were pretty devastating on their psyche, as it was really difficult for them all to cope with the idea of not only had they been robbed robbed of knowing they had siblings, but there was another version of them that existed in the world. Sadly, one of the triplets ended things at the age of 33, and the two others just drifted apart gradually over time as they found it very difficult to bond and cope with all of this. This physician is talking about what's going on in Colonia High School. If you haven't heard about this mystery, there are a staggering number of students and former teachers who have either attended or worked at this school who have all been diagnosed with the same type of brain cancer. Glioblastoma is one of the most aggressive brain tumors in the medical world, and doctors don't know what could be causing it from this particular school. The stats around this are insane. They found that students who attended this school are 330 times more likely than the national population to develop this particular type of brain cancer. We just have no idea what it is about this location that's causing it. Los Angeles pilots and the FBI are investigating multiple sightings of what appeared to be a man in the sky. Dating back to early 2020, there were multiple reports in the Los Angeles area of a man who appeared to be wearing a jetpack suit who was soaring to flight altitudes. But jetpacks are not that new, but they're also not as stable or nearly as sophisticated to get to airplane levels safely. But maybe that's not the case, because whoever this man is and whatever equipment he has access to, it's allowing him to soar to these unbelievable heights and potentially pose a flight risk. Why do people think there's some sort of conspiracy on how Brittany Murphy went out? Well, there's a few factors here. First, the home where she met her demise was sold to her from Britney Spears. Britney Spears claimed she saw a man and woman in the house which she believed to be a paranormal encounter, so she left all of her belongings and moved out that day. So Murphy occupies the home, but just before she passed, her mother made her write a will, which was odd because Britney was only about 30. After she was found collapsed, it was determined from an examination that it was due to cardiac arrest, pneumonia, as well as an iron deficiency. Her boyfriend passed 5 months later of the same exact thing. But the odd part about her examination was that the follicles of her hair had toxins found in them that could be linked to rat poison. This picture famously surfaced from 1941 because something looks very off about it. This guy, a lot of people cite this picture as proof of time travel because not only does he seemingly look very modern and out of place, but he also appears to be holding a camera that's very small, too small for any commercial grade camera of 1941. But let me explain why this is debunked. The modern t-shirt he's wearing, it's a logo for the Montreal Maroons, which was a hockey team from the 40s. The glasses were also available. They had protective side shields in the 40s too. But what about that camera? It's small enough to be a digital camera, but they did not have commercial grade cameras that were this small in the 40s. Incorrect. Kodak confirmed of a rare model of a small portable camera that was limited, but it was available by 1941, which makes this photo completely plausible.